Good morning, everyone. My name is Christelle Coleman, and I am here to host InsureTalk number 45, and I'm coming to you from Cape Town this morning. So it's August. It's Women's Month, and we are so excited to have an all-female lineup today in our on our panelist of speakers, and some really interesting individuals that are going to share maybe a little bit of a different flavor of topics this month. Our conference theme is Empowering Together, Redefining Success Through Diversity, Resilience and Courage. Courage is something that we must have as women in this business, that is for sure. I want to thank our headline sponsors today. So every month we get support from the bigger brands around the South African market, and they are the reason why we can host this conference free of charge to all of you. We get 3,000-4,000 attendees each month. And something that I wanted to ask, and I hope that you will be open to share this with us, is there are a number of people, a few thousand people, who come back to InsureTalk every single month. And I was thinking this morning while preparing for our show, why do you come back every month? You know, we often just assume it's because of CPD points. I don't believe that's the reason. So the chat is open. Please just write in there, why do you come back to our virtual conference every month as you are today? So as I mentioned to you, our headline sponsor for the day is My Way, and headline event partner is My Way, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about My Way. I remember when My Way was actually launched into the market. It was at the time when we were still very worried about the direct players, and now we all play nicely together. So My Way is a licensed non-life insurer, and they offer customers a range of insurance products, and mostly focused on motor, household, house owners, as well as business insurance and liability cover. Their major shareholder is Santam, which is of course a JSE listed company, and it gives My Way enough financial muscle and credibility to help build their unique brand identity. So they say that they are at My Way fanatical about delivering an awesome customer experience, and they view this as a real differentiator and are passionate about ensuring that they always keep their promises. So the first speaker that we have up today is from My Way. It is Naomi Nkumalu, and she's going to talk to us about the importance of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Head of People and Transformation at My Way. And I just have to tell you a little bit about Naomi. She has been in a role as My Way's Head of People and Transformation for almost, and she has almost 2 decades of experience as a human resources business partner. She joined in 2021, and she looks after human resources, including development, learning and transformation. She's an ambassador for the 67 Blankets for Nelson Mandela Day initiative, and she has a number of leadership development program qualifications, and she graduated from the executive development program from Wits Business School in 2019. Naomi, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for welcoming me. I can tell you I am extremely nervous, and one of the things that I thought is, what do I do when I feel this much imposter syndrome engulfing me? And I think it goes to the topic of today is around really sharing myself authentically and bringing my full self to the session today. So thank you everybody for joining me. I'm hoping to share my screen. There we go. Something is happening. Let's try again. Apologies.
Naomi, we could see your screen there for a moment. If you can just reshare it and then try again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Perfect, we can. Yeah, you can just go to full
Right.
presentation mode, then all good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All righty. I think for me, the topic today is very personal and very dear to my heart around fostering diversity in our workplaces. And I just want to share a quick video with you all today.
I'm going to level with you all. The reason why we're having this meeting is because our numbers are in the toilet. So, obviously, it's time for us to have a very serious conversation about diversity.
Hear, hear, her.
So, all present members of the annual board meeting of the company's executive committee for the diversified unification of unity and reparative representation, please state your pronouns on 3. 1, 2, 3.
She, her, herself.
Good. Before we publish our list of recommended advisory demands, it was brought to the committee's consciousness that we should take a moment to review our viewpoints on a variety of beliefs and points pointedly pertaining to the current collective consciousness.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it's so important.
After all, if we're not rightly representing representation, or our representation will require righteous and rigorous reparations. Yeah, and negating the necessitation of necessary nomenclature would be to stay silent.
Silence is violence.
Violence is silence.
To stay silent on the violence of silence is the science of violence.
Believe science.
Follow the science.
Listen to the science.
Silence.
The science of silence. Well, it's the only way to end violence.
I'm sorry, can we take a moment to acknowledge the history of the herstory? After all, if we're not robustly researching our research, we're really restricting our racial reach.
When what we're trying to do is race to reach the restricted.
Absolutely. And as a person of color.
I'm going to level with you.
And that's really the biggest thing around diversity and inclusion, is that the minute we start speaking of diversity and inclusion, a lot of times what we do get is big words. It's everybody, my daughter calls it quell moments, where everybody wants to say something that gives you that ooh moment, right? And I think in doing that, we over-engineer the issues of diversity and inclusion. And I just want to bring it back to the why we do diversity and inclusion. There's a list of stakeholders that, could benefit from diversity and inclusion. In any organization that is around, has various stakeholders that could be impacted by diversity and inclusion. Topmost thought is our employees. How do we make sure that they come and bring their full selves to the organization? And how do they benefit us in terms of diversity and inclusion? The leadership, the management, the decision makers are also employees, but can also, from a decision-making process, need to make sure that diversity and inclusion is topmost in their minds. The organization's owners or shareholders are definitely people who are also impacted in this space. So are suppliers. How diverse are we in terms of that? A society that we operate in and, get a lot of people, the government and regulators that we also talk about, customers in terms of how they view us. Then we look at, I've spoken about shareholders and definitely our creditors and any other partners that we partner with. Now, how do I say that they impact? Most of you would know this, and I'm just reminding you because I think diversity and inclusion has been a topic that's been going on for months and months and years, and I don't think we've really, catched it for where it is, other than to say, we see this as this big, hairy idea or ideal that we need to make sure that we encompass and we address in our organizations. So in terms of our employees, we all know that should you do diversity and inclusion properly in the workplace, you will see an increased engagement in terms of your employees, right? And as well as speaking of your net promoter score from an employee engagement. Increased productivity, because now you are able to, because of people coming together, different people coming together, we see an elevated level of productivity. It fosters trust. Once you have proper diversity and inclusion, we trust each other. And I'll share later on how to really, truly embed it in the organization. And lastly, it gives us a sense of belonging, feeling like we truly, truly are represented and we belong to the organization. For our leaders, it drives innovation for the organization. And notwithstanding that, the decision making is so rich because it's so diverse, and we're able to bring different thoughts to the table. Of course, this increases our competitiveness in the market, which is what we're all really looking for. In terms of our external supplies or external stakeholders, we're looking at customers looking for products that are designed based on their needs. We're looking at exploring uninsured markets. And I mean, I think from an insurance perspective, that's definitely what we're looking at, seeing as the number of people who are insured is not seemingly increasing in any way. Customer satisfaction in terms of being able to provide services in a way that speaks to the various customers, and again, increased net promoter score. When we speak to government and regulators, this is we have to do it, but if you understand the spirit of diversity and inclusion, or the spirit of transformation, you'll understand that it goes beyond policy adherence. But it's understanding that we're also geopolitically participating in these conversations. It forms part of our ESG strategies and really drives in making us good corporate citizens within the environment. When we look at it from the vantage point of communities that we operate in, it looks at us tackling unemployment, because now we go over and above to try and find those who are unemployed but are diverse and bringing them into our workplaces, and understanding that the communities is also the base where we find our customers. And understanding that this will allow us to develop communities and make sure that the very same communities are able to participate in our economy. Our diverse suppliers, this also, because the reality is big corporates are not going to be going crazy in terms of hiring large numbers of people within South Africa. And we must be honest that this creates an opportunity for employment and drives innovation and, again, economic growth within the ambit of diversity and inclusion. So we've spoken about the why. This was really textbook, right? What I'd like to address from this point is really the myths around diversity and inclusion, what we think diversity and inclusion, but really is not. A lot of times we think of it as a race and gender thing. And whilst that might be true, it goes beyond race and gender. When we speak of diversity and inclusion, we're also talking to the fact that it's different ways of thinking. I normally use this example. Just because I'm an African female with a bit of a twang, you can find 10 of us, but I can tell you right now, we have different thoughts, we have different feelings, we have different interests, we have different ways of seeing problems around. And because of that, if we come together and are able to explore those differences, embrace those differences, bring them onto the table, we're able to think more strategically. The other myth that we have is thinking that disparities are obvious. So things like the shape of your nose, the color of your hair, those things might be obvious, but there are other differences that we have that are not so obvious. My interests are not obvious to everybody in the room. How I think and how I feel and how I process, how I look at things from a neurological perspective, it's completely different. The other thing that we tend to do in organizations is limit the scope, the role scope of diversity and inclusion to the HR and transformation department. Whereas, in fact, this should really be underlying in everything that we do. We should be looking at diversity and inclusion. And it is not one person's responsibility. It's all our responsibility to ask ourselves, are we diverse enough? If we go into the meeting room, is the meeting room diverse enough? Does it have a big number of different thinkers, the way that they think? Do we have introverts in the room? Do we have extroverts? Do we have deep thinkers? Do we have people who are more action orientated and versus, thinkers? So it's important to make sure that everyone takes on the responsibility of diversity and inclusion. The other issue that we think of is, yeah, well, you know what? We think that only those who are affected or those who are what we call marginalized groups should be looking at addressing diversity and inclusion. Yes, and this is why, we look at why even our employee resource groups fail. It's purely because we think that the women must address women issues. Persons with disability must address issues of disability and accommodation. And it goes beyond that. It just says the rest of us should be understanding of every person and how they show up in the workplace. Another myth that I'd like to debunk is the fact that people think it is expensive. Yes, if you are going to go big and large and do a hoorah and make it a PR event, it's going to be expensive. But it's in really thinking about what are those niches, what are those small things that we need to change, that we need to do, that we need to diversify, and really having it at the back of your mind. If you were to ask yourself, what did I do for diversity and inclusion today, as perhaps one of your closing nightly, reflection moments, what did I do? Then you would know that it won't be expensive. Diversity lowers standards. That's been, I think, for me, the most insulting, and I say it tongue in cheek, sort of statement that we say. In terms of now we're lowering our standards. So if I need to diversify, for example, my team, then I must just take anybody because I'm looking to diversify. That is not true. You still need to get the right person on the bus. You need to get the rightfully skilled person on the bus. You might have to go out and build that person. That might be expensive, but it's for the greater good. And if you understand the economies of scale and break-even points, then you'd see that you don't need to lower your standards. The other thing that we assume is that training or awareness sessions solve all our problems. I can guarantee you, we can train till the cows come home. And I'm a farm girl, so I know that, sometimes them cows don't come home every night. So thinking of making sure that training and awareness doesn't solve all our problems, it's also in our attitude. And definitely what we've also seen is this notion that we need to do these big events. And I'm all for women functions and all these expos and all those wonderful things, but it's not about events. It's about changing the culture of our organization, changing the way that we do and see things that has an impact in terms of diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion is definitely not an easy and quick fix. It's not a, let's put a policy together and Bob's your uncle. It is a systematic process that we need to look at. What caused it? How are we going to undo a lot of the thinking that is gone behind this, The other thing is assuming that if you focus on diversity, making sure that you bring in Black people into the organization, that you've got enough persons living with disability, you've got enough women, you've got enough thinkers, then inclusion will follow. How often have you found that you have this month a completely diverse room, and 2 months later, everybody who was meant to be in that room has resigned? That's purely because we didn't make sure that those people felt included. They felt that they belonged in the organization. We didn't make sure that they were accommodated. An example of this, and I think most of us are aware, and because I work in diversity and inclusion, I can pull up these examples with ease and with permission. One of them is the issue of the aircon. Everybody knows how the aircon has a black and white environment. I don't know how this works, but you will find mostly Black people saying it's too cold and white people saying it's too hot. How do we marry the two and get the right temperature so that everybody is included? Another issue that I've found, especially from a sales environment or sales floor perspective, is that a lot of times when it's loud and, people speak loudly, people who tend to be quieter don't feel included in those environments. And you suddenly see that they don't feel like they belong in the organization, and that increases our turnover ratio. My favorite, and I think this is one of the myths that I love. And when I thought of it, I remembered, and here I'm giving away my age, right? I remembered the old song by Will Smith. He was the Fresh Prince, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's summertime. And the part of the lyric says, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. And I think that's the mindset that we try and look at, is to say, I'm okay for now. Nothing is broke. We're making money. But the fact is, as the world evolves, it will start breaking. So you'd rather go in before it breaks and make sure that you've made sure that diversity and inclusion is embedded, because the world is evolving and different people are emerging. And how do you ready yourself towards all those changes? So Nomi, I hear you. You are most probably thinking, so what is the most practical things that we can do? What advice would you give us that is easy, no sweat to it, and that's very practical, that we can leave here today, go into our various workplaces, and actually implement effectively? So we're going to be practical. The first step I think we need to all do is face the brutal facts. What does your data say? So look at the obvious stuff. Take your staff list. What does it look like? Have you compared the ratios? Have you looked at the productivity in one area? Have you seen the thinking patterns in that area? Go into the data. Don't be scared of that data. The next part is to look at all your policies and procedures. Are they really inclusive? The biggest one that's come up front, I'm sure you all know, the impending changes to the maternity law and the maternity rule that we're all very anxious about, where we're starting to look at men taking on the caregiver role as well. The next part that I would advise you to do is to consider current and potential customers. So what do our potential customers look like? I mean, think of the Gen Z or the young people coming into the workplace recently. The one thing that we know about them for sure is they are not interested in owning assets. What does it mean from an insurance perspective, right? And we're starting to look at driverless cars. What does that mean in terms of the future? People are not going to get licenses. So the question is, who are you insuring? Can you see that it's more than an HR talk in this case? And in terms of that, also look at the emerging workforce, the new skills that are going to be required to be able to handle those type of customers. And what are the requirements of the new people? When you say that, I'm keenly aware that people are now looking at gig work versus your full-time employment contract. Are you gearing your organization up for that eventuality, where people are not saying, are now saying, I don't want to be bogged down by one organization. I would rather do gig work throughout my career or do project work rather than to stay in one job forever. The other thing is, do train, do include learning and development, create the awareness. It's not a bad thing to do it. And again, what you do want to do is explore partnerships that can foster growth. In saying that, look at how you partner with your environment, how you partner with the communities that you operate in. How do you partner with your clients? How do you partner with your various stakeholders to make sure that you foster diverse and inclusive growth? Do we get an understanding that the products that we design will serve our diverse markets? Sometimes I don't think so. We're so comfortable sitting in our offices that we don't go out and look at, the type of products that we're giving our people. And I think the brokers will particularly find this more interesting when I talk about partnerships and fostering growth. And I really want to make this as an example of what you can do in a most practical way. So think about Nomi. She is an African girl who grew up in Soweto. Chances of me selling in Soweto successfully are greater than if I were to look at my colleague who is a white Afrikaans male. There is also the issue of age. I remember at one time I ran an enterprise and supply development program, and we were trying to assist a motor body repair shop. And one of the things is he was slightly older, but older than me, and he did not trust me. He did not trust me because of my gender. He was Black. He did not trust me because I was female. He did not trust me because I was young, or at least way younger than him. What did I do? I went back into the organization and I found one of my colleagues who happened to be an older white male. Can I tell you that what took me months to accomplish took 2 minutes for them to come up with an agreement, and therefore we were able to assist the man in growing his business, and therefore enabling him to hire more people. If I had thought that my white colleague would have not been able to move into that space, definitely the program would have failed. And those are some of the things that we look at and saying, let's reimagine, let's think about diversity and inclusion. And it's not just a government requirement. It makes business sense. I challenge all the brokers who are in here to consider partnering. And the honesty and the truth of the matter is, there is issues around succession that are prevalent in our broker market that we really need to address. What would happen, and I want you to dream with me, if we find a white brokerage partnering with a Black brokerage and bringing two diverse markets onto the table? Can you see that that would make bigger pies for all of us to now share in, instead of the limited pie, because we're all focusing on our very own spaces and that we're comfortable with? Another thing that we need to continuously do is to ask ourselves, are we truly inclusive? Are we truly bringing people to the table? Are we truly, if we continue having golf days and knowingly that not everybody plays golf? If, you sometimes find that the organization is a cycling organization. Now, I cannot cycle, I have 2 left feet, and I definitely cannot sing. So if I find myself in an environment that values those type of activities, I would completely feel left out. So what could an organization do to make me feel included? I love reading. So perhaps a little book club for the organization, and finding different interests that people have. Recently, we've seen the increase, I think it's called paddling, that changed in tennis. I think it's called paddling, and it's changed, and a lot more people are now wanting to do that. Can we introduce it into the workplace? Again, we need to continuously reevaluate ourselves. Let's think, why are we doing this? Does it make business sense? And once we do, we'll see that transformation, diversity, inclusivity, and belonging is part of a business imperative. It's what makes us people of South Africa. It's what makes us different. But whilst it makes us different, it sure needs to be making us the money as well. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you found this to be insightful. I'm happy to take any questions in the chat as well from this point.
Nomi, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights on the importance of diversity and inclusion in the workspace. And again, we appreciate MyWay for being our headline event sponsor here today at InsureTalk number 45. Up next, we have Ruanne Lazarus. She's underwriting head financial lines at SHA. SHA is also an event partner here today. SHA, we appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us. And Ruanne is going to talk to us about redefining success, resilient women, balancing and building. And, you know, I absolutely love this topic, so I can't wait to hear what she has to tell us about it. But I wanted to just remind you of our theme today. So, because it's Women's Month, we thought we would, have a specific focus on the challenges faced by women in this industry. But it's so important to remember that it takes two wings to make a bird fly. So I'm very aware of the fact that we have men and women in the audience today. And by having this focus on the challenges and the advice to women, it's also good for the men of our industry to hear those pieces of advice so that we get better at what we do. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about our topic for today. So we are focusing on the importance of diversity and inclusion. We just spoke about this with Nomi. Then how important it is to build resilient women in the workplace and by balancing and building their careers. So focusing on young women of the industry and helping them develop their career. And then the courage to enact change. And finally, we're going to be talking a little bit about sharing practical entrepreneurial advice to build successful businesses. So after that, I am going to ask Ruanne to join us and give us her insights on redefining success for women.
I am a woman. Of course, at this present time, I'm thinking of what I should take out for dinner. I am a woman. Of course, I can multitask and still have my makeup on point. I am a woman. Of course, I only have two problems: nothing to wear and no room to keep all the clothes. Thank you, Christelle, for a wonderful introduction and our host for the opportunity to speak on this platform. As I begin to unpack my topic today, I felt myself gravitating in sharing on a little bit of a different perspective for me on the meaning of
Ruanne Llewellyn, it seems like we have lost you. Are you online? Roanne, you can just share your screen again. We lost you there for a moment.
Okay, let me just start again. All good. Can you see? Can you
Perfect. Thank you
hear?
so much. We can see your screen. You can continue.
Okay. So I've realized that just the word happiness invokes different meanings. I've realized that what success really means to me. I've learned that success was finding deep fulfillment in the journey, in the season that I was in, being a mom, being a wife. And shame, children can really humble you. I felt guilty all the time, guilty of working late, guilty about not spending enough time. And I found myself often saying, I'm busy, I don't have enough time. And guess what? I never did. And I think the thing is that I wanted and needed to be it all. I needed to be the soccer mom and the carpool mom, the dinner mom, the career mom, climbing up the ladder and rocking the dance floor with heels at 38. No. I'm just kidding. I took it a bit too far there. But seriously, have you ever wondered why Mother Bear's porridge was always cold? It's hard juggling. It's hard. And as a woman, we step into different roles. I mean, you can relate. We live in Johannesburg, we drive on Johannesburg roads, and we probably have 17 different personalities just driving into work. Until a colleague of mine with 2 kids, slightly older than mine, said, work-life balance, work-life integration is hard. It feels unachievable because we are stuck in the thick of it. Because I guess it's about the season we're in, right? It usually leans lopsided, that requires our attention for that period. She said to me, be intentional, Roanne, purposefully present. So whilst getting into my car, I pondered on that for a while, intentionally present. As I journeyed, I realized it's a state of consciously and purposely focusing on the present moment. On my journey, I learned it means being fully engaged and aware of what is happening around you and within you, rather than being distracted by wandering thoughts and the present and the anxious future. It's mindfulness and the state of where we are to make a deliberate effort to experience and appreciate the present of now and making thoughtful decisions and choices in how you respond to situations. So like I said, while I was having this conversation and also having a simultaneous conversation, full-on conversation in my head, like I said, I'm a woman, I'm multitasking. But, it went something like this. Oh God, didn't do my Sunday meal prep, needed to fetch the kids, do homework, cook, and all within my rush hour of 5 to 7. But I found myself saying, Roanne, breathe. It's in the now. I had to find a way I could deal with my own drama. Sort of Act 2, Scene 406. But as a mom of 2 beautiful kids, I was busy with work and life that just consumed me during the day. And at the end of the day, I'd feel exhausted, frustrated, often not even knowing what I had accomplished all day. But I've learned to breathe through the chaos when my mind wanders from thought to thought. But sometimes I catch myself with practice, not to be so hard on myself, that I can breathe and know that I've done my best today. I can have a routine, but a flexible one, because I said to myself, Roanne, breathe, be in the now. So have you ever wondered how to navigate through it all, about resilience and the heavy emotions of stresses and worries. And I'm sure you wondering why I have a half-glass water in my hand. And I'm sure you're going to probably say, oh, she's going to ask the typical question of the half empty, half full sort of question. No, I'm not. How heavy is this glass of water that I'm holding? Some of my colleagues and friends have said 200 grams, 120 grams, or some were courageous and said it's about 3 kilos. But from my perspective, the absolute weight of this glass doesn't matter. It all depends on how long I hold it. I hold it for a minute, it's fairly light. For an hour or two, the weight might make my arm ache a little. But if I hold it for a day straight, my arm will likely cramp up and feel completely numb and paralyzed, forcing me to drop it to the floor. In each case, the weight of the glass doesn't matter, but it's for how long I hold it, the heavier it feels to me. Stresses and worries of life is very much like this glass of water. If you think of them for a while, nothing happens. Think of them for a bit longer, and you begin to ache a little. But if you think of them all day, your hands will you will feel completely numb and paralyzed, incapable of doing anything until you have to drop them. So it's important to remember to let go of stresses and worries no matter what happens during the day. As early as you can in the evening, put down your worries and stresses. Don't carry it through the night and into the next morning. And if you feel like the weight of yesterday's stresses is weighing you down, it is a strong sign that it's time to put the glass down. I have an interesting video that has inspired me on how to deal with the emotions of life. So let's take a listen.
Hi, Ryan. If you can just stop share and just remember to share your sound. There's no sound coming through from the video. Apologies for that.
When emotions hit you, it's like ink pouring into water. It quickly gets more and more intense until you can't really see anything else clearly. Everything in your life is suddenly tainted with that feeling you don't want to have. You can't escape from it, you just want it to go away. People come to therapy thinking that someone is going to teach them how to escape from it. But in fact, what you learn is how to allow it to be there, welcome it even, to pay attention to it and see it for what it is. The ink is not the water, and the emotion is not you. It's an experience, a sensation moving through you. And when you allow emotion to be there without trying to block it out or make it go away, then you allow it to take its natural course. So over time, the emotion passes and you're ready for whatever comes next. I'm a psychologist. Follow for more.
Thank you. It wouldn't be an IT platform if we didn't have this, right? So sorry about that. My next slide is about filling your cup. Our theme at SHA, melodied by our executive head, Manisha Chairman, is fill your cup. For me, this translated and embodied self-love, self-kindness, self-care, rest, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to ensure that you filled up emotionally, spiritually, and physically, so that we have an overflow, a surplus to share and serve in a unique way, knowing we will live healthier, happier, more connected, and more purposeful lives. So don't run your tank empty. Know when it is time to fill your cup, but also be mindful of what you are filling it with. Becoming a healthy state of mind and consciously building you is a progress, not perfection. You don't wake up one day and say, oh, I've healed. Success doesn't mean to the top of the ladder we must go. It's about redefining what success looks like, feels like. It's not the endless hustle and bustle one has to go through. For me, success looks like finding a balance, taking care of mental health, and setting boundaries. We were told that if we work hard enough and having our big dream of owning a home and having financial security and stability and a thriving career, and we love that, right? There's nothing wrong with it. But the reality is that the game has changed. The rules are different. Our economy, job market, loss of cost of living, the stresses of life are nothing like what previous generations were faced with. Burnout hits you when you realize that the goalpost keeps moving back, so that we have to shift our perspective on success. For some, it might mean having enough energy at the end of the day to spend time on hobbies, time with loved ones and family, or just relax with PJs on the couch. It's about finding fulfillment in the small victories and creating a life that feels good on the inside and not just what looks good on the outside. It's okay to sometimes step off the ladder and walk your own path. It's okay to prioritize your well-being over job titles. Overcoming burnout isn't about a single moment of feeling, but it's about a journey of constantly choosing yourself and what makes you truly happy, so that we can redefine your success. We have to take breaks without feeling guilty, and we have to find the joy in every moment, because we deserve to live a life that feels just as good as it is inside and out. So pausing and reflecting is great. So let's get into some of the incredible women that have gone before us, making their mark in history. In 1898, Marie Curie was one of the first women to win a Nobel Prize, and the only person to win it in two different sciences, physics and chemistry. Her groundbreaking work in radioactivity opened new frontiers in science. She has made huge contributions to finding treatments for cancer. Her dedication and her work hold testament to the value and curiosity and determination. Emily Earhart. In 1932, she became the first woman to fly nonstop and solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She challenged the expectations of her time and inspired generations of women to pause to pursue careers in aviation and other male-dominated fields. Her legacy is a call to challenge the status quo and reach for the stars. Stephanie Korlick. In 1961, she's actually a chemist who invented the strong synthetic fiber used in the bulletproof vest that we currently use today, and safety equipment. The key material for manufacturing these bulletproof vests is 5 times stronger than steel, but yet also 5 times lighter. Her invention has saved countless lives. Mary Anderson, she invented the windshield wiper in 1903. She arrived in New York and noticed that drivers had constantly leaned out of their vehicles to manually wipe the windscreens. And while this may have been a great way to get some exercise in, it was also a very quick way to getting yourself seriously injured. She set herself and her mind to inventing what we now know as the windshield wiper. She presented her invention to the industry, but was turned down numerously, as people believed that this device was not something that they could use It was only until 20 years later that the first car with the window wipers was used by Mary's basic design that came into the market, and the rest is history. It's wonderful to reflect on women throughout history who have broken barriers and challenged norms and paved their way for future generations. I want us to watch a video now on mind shifts and realizing that once you know where you need to go, you are led to move.
You've talked to everyone in the world who is successful. What would you say is the one common characteristic that you find gets people to where they want to go?
The most important question is the people get to where they want to go because they know where they want to go.
Oh, wow.
And most people don't know where they want to go. A lot of people are going and being driven by what they think they should do,
right,
what other people say they should do, what they have carried in their mind for a long time they should do. But the most important question you can ever ask yourself is, what do I really want?
Wow.
And the answer to that, once you can establish for yourself what the answer to that is, and have everything you do, every choice you make, move you in the direction of what you say your vision is.
Right.
Yeah. And when you do that, the forces of life rise up to meet you. The reason why most people have such chaotic lives is because they're living in chaos in their head. And as soon as you get clear, it clears up.
That's one of my favorite
You've talked
videos. As we navigate through, this was my vision of how to redefine success, and realizing that everyone's ladder is measured differently. So you are your only competition. You are not sentenced to this life in this way. We make our own prisons. We make our own glass ceilings that we hang over our head. You might have not gotten some things, or some things may have passed you, or you had to deal with some rough stuff. But you are your Michelangelo. You are your own artist, your own sculptor. And we get to redefine and mold. We get to level up or chin up here and there as much as we need. We get a chance to chip off as much as we need or mold as much as we need. You are the engineer of your life, and you get to redesign it and build it and choose it. So allow yourself to dream. It's never a simple question of mirror, mirror on the wall, or beginning your journey with once upon a time, or they lived happily ever after. Instead of asking the mirror, say to the mirror, I am more than enough. Say to the mirror, I am a resilient woman, and I can do anything. Thank you so much for listening to me today. If you have any questions, please pop it in the chat.
Thank you, Anne. Oh, that was a fantastic delivery, and we appreciate the time that you took to prepare for today, because I know it is not easy to come up with a 35-minute slot to share insights, to prepare, and to talk to 3,000-4,000 people around the industry, around the country, some people joining us from outside of our borders. So that was absolutely superb, and we appreciate your time here this morning. Now, in this industry, we are very, very fortunate to have some strong women leaders, and one of them, and who stands very high on her platform at the IISA, is the CEO of the IISA, Thokozile Mahlangu. And as we know, they've just had a very successful conference at Sun City, the African Insurance Exchange. I couldn't make it this year, but I am never missing out again because it looked absolutely incredible and the feedback was phenomenal. And I just want to mention something about the conference before I hand over to Thokozile. The conference is organized by the same same team that organizes the InsureTalk conference here each month. It is a mammoth task, and it's done by a relatively small expert team, and they have really delivered this year. This team is the team at CN&CO events, Llewellyn, and Francois and the rest of them. But the reason why I'm touching on this is, talking about women and women in insurance and women in business, we often need men to support us. In my time, I got opportunities because I was fortunate enough to have male mentors who assisted me and helped open doors in what was at the time a very male-dominated industry. And one of the people who opened doors for women in this industry is Carel Nolte. Carel is the CEO of CN&CO, or yes, the CEO, and there are many women in this industry who have benefited from his support and help and guidance. So, Carel, I thought it would be a good opportunity to thank you as well for supporting us in this industry. And on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Thokozile to hear how things played out at the conference. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today's update is going to be very brief. It will be followed by a video showing key highlights of the AIE 2024. Following a successful AIE 2024, we have already opened registration for the 2025 conference. So the super early bird registration rates are already available on the website, on the ISA website, so take advantage and register on the super early bird registration before it closes. We have also started engaging with potential sponsors and exhibitors, and we've also started doing research as we craft the content for AIE 2025. There are two upcoming member events. The first one is taking place on the 6th of September. It's a sip and paint, and that's a member-only event. And a big thank you to MTN for providing the sponsorship for that and enabling us to make this event available at no cost to members, and making sure that we pull members together, give members an opportunity to network with each other, and to just engage and get to know who else is an accredited professional within the industry. The second event is in October. October is our anniversary month, so we thought it would be great this year to celebrate that month by hosting a golf event. That event is open to everyone, and there are also different sponsorship packages that one can take advantage of. So do take the time, if you're a golfer, take the time to register. Registration is already open. Register for this event and join us. Come engage with members and non-members, and also take the opportunity to become a member if you are not. The second cohort of the Youth Accelerator program that I've been talking about since beginning of the year will be commencing in October. We've gone through the process of recruitment. We have about 15 young bright minds that will be embarking on this journey, learning the critical technical elements of insurance, both from a theoretical perspective as well as practice. And a big thank you to ABSA Life Insurance, as well as Sazria for sponsoring this cohort and making sure that we create a pool of skilled professionals that will be able to take the industry forward. We also have a mini MBA that will be starting in September, and that program really focuses on enhancing the functions of senior management, executive management, and also giving one the ability to operate in the digital environment, leading in the digital environment, growing businesses, marketing businesses, and also how to manage human capital in this new environment that we operate in. And that, as I said, will be commencing in September, and is one of the flagship successes of this year. And we look forward to seeing the results of that. Lastly, the Insurance Director program will be starting in October. we'll be sending out a call to action. So if you are a director already, an aspiring director, or someone at executive management that wants to enhance their knowledge in the director space, the insurance director program is something you want to embark on. So the program focuses on sharpening skills to be able to have meaningful conversations around the boardroom table. It really looks at how can a director effectively operate within the board engagements. So that's it for me for now. Take time to watch the upcoming video showing key highlights of the AIE 2024. Until next time, goodbye.
This is AIE 2024. Welcome.
Actually called the Africa Insurance Exchange because exchange is really what we do in the insurance industry. It's about exchanging promises to one another. It's about exchanging our contracts. It's a promise that we actually make to our policyholders and our policyholders make to us in part.
AIE 2024!
I love this conference. I love this conference. I have been working in and around this marketplace for almost my whole career, which spans almost 25 years. And this is actually the first time I've been able to make it to this conference. So I'm really grateful for that. But the energy and the excitement here is incredible.
The conference has been absolutely exceptional. Since Discovery launched in 2011, we've actually sponsored this conference every single year. And it's off the back of the value where we believe we have to liberate the best in our people. And this really is a place where the whole insurance industry comes together. I believe really the rising tide lifts all boats. We learn new skills and we network because we believe in strategic relationships.
So this is our third year at this convention, and we, as per every year, it's been great from the point of view of networking and just getting to see everyone in the industry, a lot of familiar faces, and the speakers have been wonderful, and it has been a very worthwhile experience yet again for Millpark Education and our School of Financial Services just being here.
AIE 2024, the 50th conference we have been celebrating. Thanks to everyone who took the time to join us as we celebrated this jubilee. Come inside and let's talk some more. The registration for AIE 2025 is already open. The dates are 27 July to the 30th. And with this year having set a tone of what we did, we look forward to crafting another unforgettable experience that you will have. Thank you all for making the time to join the conference, and thanks to sponsors, exhibitors, and all attendees from all over the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Thokozile. And I hear from Llewellyn and his team here at CN&CO that they already have bookings for next year's conference, and that in itself just shows you what a wonderful success it was. So I hear that the Super Early Bird special is open, and the producers are going to pop the link into the chat. So if you're keen to save a bit of money and book already now for next year, do it, because you won't be disappointed. Now, I've been going on about the fact that it's an all-female lineup, but we have something for the eye up next, for the woman in the audience. You know, every month we have a local artist. The team at CN&CO support local talent right from the first event that we had in 2020. And we have a talented individual today that's going to serenade the ladies of the industry, I understand. It's Timothy de Monk. He's a pop singer and songwriter here from Cape Town. And he has been... he discovered his love for music in 2014, and he started learning the guitar, and he started performing at various venues in and around Cape Town. And then in 2017, Timothy released 3 hit singles. Fast forward to 2022, saw the launch of TDM Media Creation to provide the skills and services to other creatives. So instead of just being a singer-songwriter, he is also in the business of entertainment. So let's hand over to Timothy and go and get that cup of coffee or glass of water, because the last part of the conference is just about to begin.
What's happening in InsureTalk? My name's Timothy de Monk. It's such an honor to be back with you guys. If you can remember, I was one of the guys who performed last year, and it was such an amazing experience. Once again, thank you for having me. Like when you said you felt so happy you could die. I told myself that you were right for me, but felt so alone in your company. But that was love after make me still remember. And you can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness, like resignation to the end, always the end. And when we felt that we could not said that we could still be friends. But I'll admit that I was glad it was over. But you didn't have to cut me off and make out like it never happened, that we were nothing. I'm guessing I didn't need your love. You treat me like a stranger and I feel so rough. But you didn't have to stoop so low and have your friends collect your reports and then change your number. I'm guessing I didn't need that, no. And now you're somebody that I used to know. Somebody that I used to know. And now and then I think of all the times you screwed me over. But in me believing there was always something that I'd done. And I don't wanna live that way, leading to every word you say. You said that you could let it go, that I wouldn't get you hung up on somebody that you used to know. But you didn't have to cut me off and make out like it never happened and that we were nothing. I'm guessing I didn't need your love. You treat me like a stranger and I feel so rough. But you didn't have to stoop so low and have your friends collect your records and then change your number. I'm guessing I didn't need that, no. And now you're somebody that I used to know. Somebody that I used to know. But you didn't have to cut me off and make out like it never happened, that we were nothing. I'm guessing I don't need your love. You treat me like a stranger and I feel so rough. But you didn't have to stoop so low and have your friends collect your records and then change your number. I'm guessing I don't need that, no. And now you're somebody that I used to know. And now you're somebody that I used to know. Somebody that I used to know. Well, you done me and you bet I felt it. Try to beat you, you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks. And I'm trying to get back. Before the cool done run out, I'll be giving it my best. There's nothing's gonna stop me but divine intervention. I reckon it's again my turn to win some or learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm your horse. But I've been spending way too long checking my tongue in the mirror, bending over backwards just to try to see it clearer. My breath fogged up the glass, and so I drew on your face and laughed. But then you done me in your bed, I felt it. Try to beat you, you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks, and I'm trying to get back. before the cool down run out, I've been giving it my best. It's nothing's gonna stop me but divine intervention. I reckon it's again my turn to win some or learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. Cool. Was that fine? Was that cool? Thank you once again, InsureTalk. My name is Timothy DeMonk, and don't forget to stream my songs and check out my profiles, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all sorts, all under Timothy DeMonk.
I know Lisa personally. I actually met her on social media and we became friends. Lisa Hartley, she's a South African living in the Netherlands, where she currently works in McKinsey's private equity and principal investors practice. She immigrated during the pandemic, and she achieved a number of wonderful things. I actually don't want to tell her whole bio here today because I believe it's part of her story. I am absolutely fascinated by Lisa's career and story, and I continue to be fascinated by her. So before saying too much, I'd rather let her tell her story. And then have a few comments afterwards. So Lisa, welcome all the way from Amsterdam, and we look forward to your inspirational journey.
Thank you so much, Christelle, and thank you everyone for being here today and listening to me speak. When Christelle first approached me to speak today, she asked me to tell my story, which of course I'm uniquely qualified to do, but I just wasn't sure if anyone would find it interesting. But after some convincing on her part, and when I took a moment to zoom out, so to speak, I realized that there is probably a lot in my story that may resonate with other people, especially women, around topics like breaking into a male-dominated industry, striking out on your own, and letting go of things on which society places a huge amount of importance, especially for women. Now, I just want to say, after my fellow speakers today did beautiful presentations, I do not have a presentation today. That is partly because I spend half of my life making presentations for work, and partly because, like I said, I'm just here to tell you my story, which didn't feel like it needed backup material per se. So as Christelle mentioned, my name is Lisa Hartley. I'm a South African living in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, which is where I am as I speak to you today. People often ask me where I'm from in South Africa, and I tend to say all over. I was born in Johannesburg, and I grew up in a small town in Mpumalanga. I went to boarding school in KwaZulu-Natal, during which my parents moved to Pretoria and Johannesburg. I studied in Stellenbosch, then moved briefly to Pretoria, where I did my honours degree while I was working. And then I moved back to Cape Town, where I lived for nearly 10 years until I moved to Europe in 2020. I severely disliked the small conservative town where I grew up. I think it's easy to think you were more than you really were looking back on your younger self. But from a very young age, I found myself struggling to connect with the people around me with their small town mindsets. I always knew that I wanted more, which is how I ended up in boarding school. That may seem like a trivial move, but it was a huge step to me and opened my world in so many ways. And to this day, I credit my high school setting with shaping the person I am today to a large extent. I actually recently spoke to someone who knew me as a child, and she told me that even when I was a tiny girl of maybe 8 or 9 years old, I used to tell her that someday I would live in Paris. I don't even remember this, but she actually did. Now, at this point, I do want to also mention my parents, because in a world where we are very self-focused, it can be easy to take stock of the things we did to get to where we are in life. And that is important, but the truth is, good or bad, we are a product of the people around us. I always say I had a great combination in my parents. My mum told me I could achieve absolutely anything I could dream in this world. My dad said that might be true, but reminded me that it would take a lot of hard work, determination, and grit. To give you a brief overview of my professional background, I'll start by saying it has been a wonky path. I have worked in many different industries and roles. I studied a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in politics and Mandarin, because I've always loved languages. I'm currently learning my 6th language, which is Dutch, which is less similar to Afrikaans than you'd think. And when I was young, I wanted to be a journalist. I worked in broadcast media for a while, but one day I surveyed the path forward and decided that the ceiling of the typical journalism career was not exactly where I wanted to end up. I then worked in strategy for a while, and born out of a chance interaction, which made me aware of a gap in the market, I founded my own business. What happened was that while I was out shopping one day, I overheard a woman of color asking a sales associate where she could find a nude slip to wear under a lace dress. Try as she might, she couldn't explain to the sales associate that beige, for her, was not nude, and it defeated the purpose of wearing a slip under her lace dress to create that nude effect. And this got me thinking about all the products that are not truly representative of the broader population. Things like stockings and ballet shoes. Makeup has come a long way, but even that isn't where it needs to be yet. And based on this moment that I experienced, I developed a first-to-market product, which was plasters or Band-Aids, if there are any Americans in the room, for different skin tones. I bootstrapped the business, and when I say bootstrap, I really am not exaggerating. It was a time where a lot of venture capital funding really went to tech businesses. People were really focused on that, and we know that women struggle a lot more to get funding when it comes to venture capital. I myself covered product development, packaging design, compliance, distribution, sales, you name it, I was running it. I was selling plasters out of the boot of my car at some point, driving to individual pharmacies to generate enough sales data to justify meeting with the big retailers. I borrowed Pantone books from fashion designers and walked around asking people if I could match the squares to their skin tones. The product garnered international media attention, including a feature on CNN, and I never thought I'd say this, but an article in the Daily Mail in the UK after celebrity chef Lorraine Pascal posted about it. I was on shelf with my product in hundreds of stores in South Africa, Namibia, and maybe as a sign of things to come, the Netherlands. Sadly, that business was ultimately not a commercial success, and it no longer exists. The lessons I learned from it could be a talk in itself, but that's for another day. Christelle, maybe if today goes well, you can invite me back someday. I will say one thing about this failure, though. It took a while to come to terms with it, but now it's something I say quite proudly. I have mentioned in almost all of my business school and job interviews over the past 4 or 5 years that I am a failed entrepreneur, because I believe that entrepreneurship teaches you so much, and perhaps even more so when it doesn't go to plan. I have, framed in my kitchen here in Amsterdam, a poster I took off of a lamppost in Cape Town when my business was on the front page of a newspaper. And I remain incredibly proud of what I did to achieve what I did with that business, despite a somewhat disappointing ending. After shuttering my business, I joined a company in the telecom space, and I started to get involved in their mergers and acquisitions function. This was not a part of my job description, just something that really interested me. I had become more and more interested in finance since being an entrepreneur, which, especially if you're bootstrapping a business, requires getting involved in every single function of the business, whether you want to or not. This is a great opportunity to learn what you enjoy a lot, and what you enjoy less, and what you're good at versus what you should maybe consider outsourcing to someone else. I became very interested in the financial side of companies, not so much accounting, but looking at what made companies successful. What are the success factors for a particular industry, for example? What makes one company successful while its competitor fails? And particularly, what makes a failing company turn around into a successful one once it's acquired? Since I'd been hired to head up this company's regional expansion in the Western Cape after they acquired a business in Cape Town, I started getting involved in everything from target scanning for potential companies they could also buy, to due diligences on those potential targets, and then post-merger integration for the companies that were ultimately acquired. I became really interested in this world, and I wanted to make a professional move in this direction, but my employer at the time had somewhat limited opportunity for this kind of pivot. I had also always wanted to move abroad. I traveled quite a lot, but I had lived and worked in South Africa all my life. My husband at the time kept saying someday, but in hindsight, he was saying this purely to appease me, and I can now see that that someday for him will never happen. The catalyst for immigrating in my case was unfortunately not a positive one. Just a trigger warning that I'm going to talk about gender-based violence and femicide. I'm going to pause for a second so that if anyone wants to put me on mute for the section, they can do so. It will last about 90 seconds if you want to turn your audio back on after that. My friend Megan Kramer was murdered in Cape Town in 2019 on the farm where we both did horse riding. Living in South Africa, which has one of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the world, I know many of us here today, if not most of us, can relate to a life of feeling unsafe at times. This event made me into a person that was permanently afraid and paranoid, which were traits I didn't recognize in myself. And I didn't like this change. My mother happened to be visiting me in Cape Town that weekend because it was my birthday. Megan's body was discovered the day before my birthday, which is ironic because my birthday falls on National Women's Day. And my mum pointed out to me how easily it could have been me. Megan and I were about the same age, same size. I park next to her car every day. We both even had 2 horses, 2 old horses that we'd had for a while, 2 younger horses that we'd recently bought at the same time, and the 4 of them were stabled next to each other. The interchangeability of that situation was a wake-up call to me and a stark reminder that it could have been me, and could be me, and it could be any woman at any time. Now, please don't interpret this as being a critique of South Africa as a whole, or a suggestion that women should all follow my lead. That's not what this is. It's just my personal experience to give context to some of the decisions that followed. Now, back when I had my own company, because it was a first-to-market product, it got a fair amount of media attention, both at home and internationally, as I mentioned. A South African woman who was at the time working at the OECD in Paris spotted the product online and reached out and asked me to send some plasters to her and her husband. I think the shipping cost about 10 times as much as the retail value of what I was sending, and it was completely worth it. I remember so clearly the day she sent me a photo of her husband wearing one of those plasters. It was an almost perfect match with his skin tone. She was so impressed by the product, and we've kept in touch ever since. In fact, she's a big part of the reason I am where I am today. One day, we met up in Paris while I was traveling, and at the end of a 5-hour meeting, she told me she thinks I should do my MBA at a school in France called INSEAD. I brushed this off as a pipe dream at the time, but this woman, for whatever reason, believed in me probably more than anyone except my own mother. There's a lesson in that too. A lesson in women supporting other women, because when we do that, amazing things can happen. Years later, after what happened to Megan, I decided that living abroad was no longer someday. It needed to be right now. I explored many options and ultimately came to the conclusion that the MBA was my best chance. It can be hard to break into the international job market as a South African, and in addition, as I mentioned, since getting more involved in mergers and acquisitions at work, I decided I wanted to pivot my career into something related to private equity eventually. So I decided the MBA would be the thing that enabled me to do all of this. For those who don't know it, INSEAD is one of the best business schools in the world. It is consistently ranked in the top 4 for MBA alongside Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. Now, when I started looking at the types of people who got into INSEAD and the admission requirements, it felt completely out of reach for me. To mention some of our alumni, just quickly, Bob van Dijk, the CEO of Naspers, Barbara Coppola, the CEO of Decathlon, Jessica Uhl, the former CFO of Shell, Karine van Gennep, the CEO of Dutch bank ING, Olympic gold medalist Christina Teuscher, and Tejane Thiem, former CEO of Credit Suisse, member of the International Olympic Committee, and the current presidential candidate for the Ivory Coast. In addition to all of that, I saw the fees, which were several times my annual South African salary at the time, before even factoring in the cost of living abroad for a year. I would have to take on a huge student loan, which only covers tuition. And since I'm South African, that would come at a hefty interest rate compared to my European and American counterparts. Now, I will say that I'm fortunate enough to have financial support from my family, which is a privilege that has to be acknowledged. But still, the cost of this stopped me in my tracks. When I voiced this out loud, that same woman who put the idea of INSEAD in my head in the first place put me in touch with someone from Nigeria who had gone through much the same process as I had, but who had since gone to and graduated from INSEAD. His advice to me was to try not to focus on the money. Again, that's easier to do depending on one's personal situation, but to trust that the way in which this qualification would set me up for the next phase of my career would be such that paying off that student loan would be very much within my reach. I suggested maybe I could do an MBA at another school. That way I would be studying abroad, but the tuition fees would be maybe a fifth of what they would be at INSEAD. His advice was, if you're going to do this, do it in a way that is worthwhile. And he was right. I trusted his advice. I decided to apply, and I registered for the compulsory GMAT exam that everyone has to write to be accepted, giving myself 3 weeks to study for it. In hindsight, significantly less time than almost all of my classmates gave themselves, but I apparently don't like to make things easy for myself. But all's well that ends well, and perhaps my naivety meant that there was less room for self-doubt. I landed on exactly the score I was aiming for and managed to get my application in on the last day of the last round for the class of July 2021. Most people spend a lot more time preparing for this, but because of the circumstances under which I decided to move abroad, it was a very compressed timeline. I had to write countless essays for my application. I had to do interviews via video call with these intimidatingly successful INSEAD alumni. And then came the pandemic. Does anyone remember that? Home alone, because the aforementioned former husband at the time was with a family member who was ill, I found out I was accepted at INSEAD in the middle of lockdown. It wasn't exactly the celebratory opportunity one would hope for, but I responded by drinking an entire bottle of champagne by myself while video calling my friends and family one by one. Because of the pandemic, many people who were going to business school were debating deferring to a later intake. Emotions were high and we were in a state of information overload. Ultimately, I decided not to defer, knowing that this was without a doubt what I wanted to do, and unsure whether 6 months down the line, we would find ourselves in a time of less or maybe even more uncertainty. I am also an exceptionally impatient person, and now that I was so close to starting to follow the stream, I just was not about to put a pause on that. When my husband got back home after lockdown, he told me he was not moving to France with me. Since I was not planning on coming back to South Africa after the MBA, I told him in that case we had about 6 weeks to get divorced, which was actually quite easy to do because he had no assets, so all he had to do was move out of my apartment and sign some paperwork. My response to this might sound really cutthroat to some of you, but sometimes people tell you everything you need to know in a single answer. And I urge you to listen when that happens. If you tell your supposed life partner that you are traumatized by the murder of your friend at the place where you do your favorite hobby in the world, and even that does not make them willing to move somewhere safe for your sake, walking away is actually not that difficult. Now, emigrating during the pandemic was a very interesting experience. I should mention at this point that I have 2 cats who moved with me from South Africa to France, to Singapore, where I spent a few months on INSEAD's Asia campus, back to France, and finally to the Netherlands. Most of this happened during the pandemic, and I'm pretty sure they traveled more than about 90% of people during that time. They were the mascots of my class at business school, and as stressful as it was getting them around the globe, especially in a pandemic, they played a large part in getting me through the tough times of the past few years. Hold on to the things that give you comfort, because even if they seem trivial, if they are helping you survive, they're anything but. I turned my entire life upside down in those next few weeks. I had to get a study visa, get divorced, quit my job, do a handover to my successor, say goodbye to everyone important in my life in whatever way I could, rent out my apartment, find a place for my horse to be ridden and taken care of, do all manner of tests and microchipping to have my cats approved to enter Europe, do all sorts of tests so that I was allowed to fly, and maybe the most difficult of all, pack my entire life into just 2 suitcases. I also had to apply to physically leave the country because you couldn't just fly out on a whim at that time. An email address had been set up. I'm not joking. It was something like flights@gov.za. And you had to show proof of why you had grounds to leave. So in my case, that was my admission email and a timeline of the course, as well as stating which of the limited amount of flights they had available you would like to take. So your case was evaluated by an individual, and if approved, you were then given the go-ahead to book the flight you had chosen. So I was put on a repatriation flight to France in August of 2020, just after my birthday. The travel restrictions meant I couldn't say goodbye to all of my friends and family, and I didn't know at that stage that there would be 14 months ahead of me where I would not see one single person I knew. Every single person I saw until October the following year, when my dad came to visit me in Paris, was someone new in my life. I had to be dropped off at the Greenpoint Stadium and then taken to the airport in a bus because friends and family were not allowed at the airport. Thankfully, they served wine on the plane. Some of you may have blocked this from your memory, but never forget that alcohol sales were banned during lockdown. Now, INSEAD itself was an unforgettable experience, and I've become an ambassador for the school because I simply cannot recommend it enough. It was a whirlwind 10 months of meeting hundreds of new people, all of whom are incredibly impressive, smart, accomplished, and interesting. We were a smaller class because of the pandemic and the deferrals. We were 311 people with 62 nationalities. I made lifelong friends in that time, and the general consensus is that the COVID factor actually made us more closely bonded as a class. I have been to INSEAD weddings all around the world, the next 2 being in Mexico and actually South Africa, and some of them are people who met at business school, didn't know each other prior to that. We've also had many INSEAD babies. I learned so much in those 10 months, and I don't mean academically, although of course the classes were amazing too, I will say that. I took electives like negotiations, power and politics, and psychological issues and management. We did case studies on Disneyland, on the Lord of the Rings franchise, wineries in Australia and India, and just a note here that South African wine is still the best, and Tiffany. I participated in competitions like inter-school investment banking contests, strategy days, and venture capital pitching. I did a due diligence for a venture capital firm, which ended up informing their investment decision. I was selected for the Capital Group mentorship program, which meant that I was working one-on-one with a partner at the firm based in California for months. I joined, and in some cases led, INSEAD student clubs, including the INSEAD Women in Business, OUTSEAD, which is our LGBTQ+ club, the Investment Banking Club, and a personal favorite, VINSEAD, the INSEAD Wine Club. We were in France after all. But more than anything, the way in which the people with whom I shared that MBA journey enriched my life is impossible to put a price on. I would take on all those debts again if that was what it took to keep my INSEAD classmates in my life. I graduated in July of 2021 and found myself working in consulting in the Netherlands. Specifically, as Christelle mentioned, I'm currently in the private equity practice of McKinsey & Company, which is a company so elite and so difficult to get accepted into that I honestly sometimes can't believe I'm actually here. The firm receives about 1 million job applications per year and makes 10,000 offers. I'm what we call an INSEAD triple whammy in the sense that I changed my industry, my role, and my geography all in one go, post-MBA. I do want to mention, though, that my post-MBA career placement, which I'm really happy with, but it did happen only after a very big hiccup. I mentioned that part of the reason why I decided to join the MBA was that I wanted to pivot my career into something related to private equity, whether that was straight out of business school or further down the line. Now, INSEAD provides each student with a career coach. And when I mentioned these ambitions to mine, he did warn me that private equity is the most sought after industry among my classmates and by far the hardest to break into. Have I mentioned that I don't like to make things easy for myself? So after 6 months in France, I applied and was accepted for campus exchange, meaning I would be doing 2 months on our Asia campus in Singapore, or so I thought. While I was in Singapore, out of nowhere, I was asked to come into the offices of a private equity company based in Singapore, something which I thought would be a quick and casual chat. People are generally very willing to hear you out and put out feelers, but these opportunities very rarely result in something concrete. What I certainly didn't expect was for the founder and CEO to walk in and tell me that he was looking for a chief of staff and really liked the look of my profile. He had had a good experience employing other INSEAD graduates in the past, and he specifically wanted a woman. He wanted someone from a developing country, and he wanted someone with entrepreneurial experience. It was a hyper-specific profile, which I happened to fit perfectly. So over the next 5 days, I did 8 interviews, I believe, and I was eventually offered the job. In addition to the difficulty of breaking into private equity, Singapore was a highly desirable job market, as it still is today, which was all but off limits during the pandemic. In fact, for my class, the big consulting firms were not recruiting for their Singapore offices at all that year, except for candidates that were actually Singaporean. I had somehow pulled off the impossible. And while I had envisaged myself being in Europe after graduating, this job opportunity was absolutely something I could not turn down. One problem was that during the pandemic, it was almost impossible to enter Singapore. We were lucky as students of a school with a local campus, but I knew of South Africans who had visited home and had not been allowed back in Singapore for over a year, despite having jobs and families back in Singapore. Based on this, my new employer asked me to consider finishing my MBA on the Asia campus, which I did. I went as far as sending for my cats, who had been staying with a classmate of mine back in France. And if I had to tell you about the process of getting them to Singapore without my being in France to travel with them, we would be here for double the amount of time as has been allocated to me today. Then, as my cats boarded a plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, and I was so excited to start this new life in Singapore, I received a call from the head of HR at my new employer that the Singaporean government had declined my work visa. I had to work very hard not to go into full panic mode. I tend to allow myself to feel my feelings, so my crises are sharp increases of big emotions, but very short-lived, because I immediately go into operating mode and how we're going to solve this. We decided to appeal the decision, which you can do once. The dean of INSEAD himself wrote a letter to support my application, and we put together everything we can. Still, it was declined. The government never gave a reason, but I connected with the local South African community, including the president of the Chamber of Commerce for South Africa and Singapore, that's a mouthful, who mentioned to me that to the best of his knowledge, not a single South African had had their visa application approved in recent months in Singapore. Without a concrete answer, our only conclusion was that, as was the case in so many countries at the time, the government had become protectionist during the pandemic, when so many jobs were lost, so looking after its own people first. I do know that allowances for employing foreigners were slashed pretty much in half, and I found myself landing the best job with the absolute worst timing. It was a big blow to me. The cats live happily wherever they are, it seems, and they were quite unbothered by this upheaval. But I had to accept that after doing absolutely everything I could to try change the situation, this time I just couldn't win. Turns out the one truly insurmountable obstacle I've countered in my life is the Singaporean government. But what this did offer was the chance to take a step back and really think about what would come next. As exciting as the Singapore opportunity had been, I reminded myself that what I had originally wanted was to be in Europe. And so I focused on finding a similarly exciting job in the field I wanted to enter, but on the continent where I wanted to live. I always assumed that this would mean London because it's a big English-speaking job market, but I ended up having far more luck in the Netherlands, ultimately receiving 4 offers in Amsterdam. That felt very welcoming after Singapore, and the opportunities were all really exciting. So I moved back to Europe, and after a 2-month stint of living my best life in Paris, I came to Amsterdam for the very first time on the day I became a resident of the Netherlands. Now, moving and living abroad is not without its challenges, and I always remind South Africans of this when they complain about the state of things back home. Every choice you make in this life is a sacrifice of something else. And believe me when I say that even though every single decision I have made since January 2020 has been the right one for me, that does not mean I have not had to give up as much as I have gained. The life in Amsterdam I live today is the one I've always dreamed of when I said I wanted to move abroad, though. I'm in the center of a vibrant city with no shortage of museums, galleries, and restaurants to keep me busy. I can walk around safely, alone, at night. I spend most of my weekends traveling because a short flight gets me pretty much to any European city where I can once again enjoy art, culture, and food without fear. I mentioned before that I have privilege, and that must be acknowledged, and I stand by that. But my life today is also the way it is because I made it so. I recently actually went back to a text message I sent to the woman in Paris where I said to her, I don't think I have what it takes to get into INSEAD. I had forwarded that same message back to her on the day of my graduation as a way to acknowledge how far I had traveled from sitting in South Africa filled with self-doubt to achieving honestly everything I had set out to do. And this brings me to the things that I would like people, particularly women, to take away from my story today. I mentioned that I work at McKinsey, and we always joke that we do everything in 3s. All of our presentations have 3 factors or 3 takeaways or 3 of anything that we're talking about. So true to form, I would like to leave you with the 3 key things I have learned from the journey I've had over the past few years. Number 1, do not fall into the trap of an emotional sunk cost fallacy. And what do I mean by that? The concept of the sunk cost fallacy, for those who don't know, is this. Let's say you invest 1 million rand in a business. The business starts to go badly and your money is disappearing. The thought of losing that money is panic-inducing, so you put another 1 million into the business to try to turn things around, and then another 1 million and another, because you think if you just put in a little bit more, everything will turn around and you'll get all of it back. But eventually what sometimes happens is that you lose 5, 6, 7 million because the thought of losing the initial money was too painful to consider. I'm using round numbers, obviously just for illustrative purposes, but the basic concept is that of throwing good money after bad. When you keep doing that, you can end up losing much more than if you know when to choose to quit and literally cut your losses. And there is an emotional version of this, and it is often seen in marriage. During our management accounting class, the professor was trying to find an analogy for the sunk cost fallacy, and I suggested marriage. He said he usually doesn't bring up that example because it can offend people, but that he agreed with me and marriage is the perfect analogy. Now, I say marriage more than long-term relationships because there are additional layers of investment attached to marriage. Maybe you spent a lot of money on a wedding. You promised forever in front of dozens, if not hundreds of people, and this life that you've built together with this other person is all over social media. The complexity increases even more if you have children together, have assets together. And sometimes when things are no longer working, people fall into a trap that looks a lot like the sunk cost fallacy. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying you all need to go home now and divorce your partners. I'm not saying that some things are not worth working on and worth repairing, because of course they absolutely are. But some things are not. And it is easy to end up throwing good emotions and time and money and energy after bad, and realizing years down the line that maybe you should have called it quits a lot earlier. This world is full of messaging about never giving up, but I disagree. I do believe in working hard and pushing through challenges to get to where you want to be. Quitting a bad thing is not giving up. It's prioritizing what is right for you. I do not shy away from hardship, but I'm also an advocate for knowing when to quit what doesn't serve you. Now, this point is relevant to anyone, but as women, we are so often burdened with the pressures of homemaking, of raising children, of keeping that familial unit together. Our worth is measured by things like getting married and having children far more than men. And that makes it even more difficult to make these tough choices. That brings me to my next takeaway, number 2. Big change comes from bold moves. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Now, that is true, generally speaking, but it is especially true for big changes. If you want to radically transform your life, that is going to have to come with big decisions, big changes, and trust me, a lot of sacrifice. Big change is really scary, and it is hardly ever easy to achieve. And I know each person's situation is different, but I'm quite confident that whatever your big change looks like, it will be worth it in the end. A lot of my journey has been characterized by bravery, whether it was starting a company or ending my marriage or moving abroad all alone during a pandemic. I often talk about having 24-karat courage. And my advice is just do the brave thing. And finally, number 3, your next move doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to make sense. I mentioned at the start that my career path has been anything but a straight line. To this day, even with INSEAD and McKinsey on my CV, people will refer to my profile as non-traditional. I didn't do a financial degree for my undergrad. I didn't go and work in a bank after that. I have worked in broadcasting, strategy, operations. I started my own company. And all of these things happened in the fields of media, consumer packaged goods, telecoms, retail. And despite that background, and having done an undergrad degree in politics and languages with very average grades to show for it, to be honest with you, today I work in the private equity practice of the world's most prestigious consulting firm. And I did not get here in one big perfect step. I got here in very many small steps, each of which brought me a little bit closer to where I ultimately want to be. Don't think you can't make the radical changes I talked about earlier because you can't do it in one go. If you want to transform any element of your life, once you've decided where it is you'd like to end up, my advice is to take each step with the end goal in mind. If I can take my wonky career path and shape it into the career I have today, I am confident that anything is possible. Not in one step, but it is possible. What I hope I achieved today is for even just one woman listening to my story to consider making the big move that she has been dreaming of. I don't know you yet, but I will always champion anyone who's making bold, audacious choices in pursuit of their dream life. From firsthand experience, I can tell you it is absolutely worth it. So I just want to thank everyone for listening to me speak today. I recently started doing one-on-one mentoring sessions with women who would like to discuss anything from moving abroad, pursuing an MBA, breaking into consulting, or frankly, any other burning questions about big decisions in life. Today, we are going to give away 1.5 hour virtual mentoring session. If you'd like to enter that, please email the producers. I believe their email addresses will be in the chat. You can send them a short motivation for wanting to do the session with me, as well as a link to your LinkedIn profile, and we will then choose a winner. The deadline for that is Friday, close of business. Thank you so much.
Wow. I expected this to be a fantastic talk, but Lisa, as she always does, she does everything with excellence. And I'm not a big quote person, but there is just a quote that I need to just came to my mind when I was listening to your story, Lisa, and it says, and you know it, it's a well-known one. It says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." And you absolutely represent that. So you will see that I'm not sitting in my normal spot when you see me on the screen. And today I'm actually going to also be giving you a talk. Like Lisa said, I like to make things hard for me, and going after her is going to be something else. But she mentioned that she's going to give away a half an hour one-on-one session with a talented woman in the industry. And please do apply and take this time to think about where you want to go with your life. So I'm sure Llewellyn has posted the email address in the in the chat. And Lisa, just before you leave us, I wanted to say to you, having done numerous of these InsureTalk sessions, I know when the speaker grabs the audience because the chat is really quiet while you speak. And today it was super quiet, and now it's just exploding. There's a few questions for you if you can get to that. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Amsterdam. Now it's my turn to share some of my my learnings over the years with you. So I'm the last speaker of the day. Well, we have another speaker after me, just a short closing out session. And I've decided, well, I was very, very privileged to be invited to be a speaker. It's actually the first time that I think I talk on InsureTalk. Maybe my memory is failing me. And when the producers invited me to be on to be a speaker today, I thought, what can I talk about? I always talk about, women in business and women in leadership, and my passion for, for promoting gender equality in the workplace. So I thought, let me have a bit of a topic that is more around what I do in my life, which is I like to start businesses, and some tips of advice on what to do, what worked for me as an entrepreneur. And that I hope will work for you as well. So it's a little bit more of a practical session, and you can use this in your work life, in your private life. There's sort of general advice, and these are the things that have really stood me in good stead over the years. So I'm now going to share my screen, and I hope I don't get it wrong. Screen. Okay, there we go. Llewellyn, are we good?
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you so much, Christelle.
Thank you so much. So before we get into the real nitty-gritty of my presentation, I want you to just take a step back and imagine. We have a bit of a theme going here today, and this is Paris. So imagine yourself, you're not sitting in front of your laptop. You are, throw your mind back to October of 2018, which is the moment where my story starts. And it's Paris. It's a quite a cool day in Paris, a little bit overcast, a little bit like the picture on the screen. And I am dressed to the nines. I step out of my beautiful apartment where I was staying in the first arrondissement of Paris into the back of a big black Mercedes-Benz limousine. That's the only way that I can actually describe it. With a chauffeur that opens the door for me. I step into the back of the car. We drive down past the Eiffel Tower on our way to a Michelin star restaurant, and I'm there for work. And I kept on thinking in my head, what on earth is Clippy from Philippi doing in Paris? And I say Clippy from Philippi because this is where my real story started. So I wanted to share this. Many of you have heard the story, but I wanted to share this as an intro into the my past in where I ended up. So I grew up, first of all, Clippy means, my dad gave me this nickname. It's Klipkop, hard-headed, stubborn. So that was my nickname for my entire life when I was growing up, Clippy the toy. And we ended up, after a terrible fall from grace, in Philippi on the Cape Flats in the early 80s. Now, the Cape Flats in the early 80s was not a nice place to live. I mean, I didn't experience exactly what is on the screen, but that was going on around us. Our house was a stone's throw away from Crossroads, where the local corner cafe was, where I used to walk to go and buy some sweets. And what I'm going to say next is not to be, disrespectful to any person of color. But we were the only white people living in this area. We were living in what was called a gray area in the 80s, the early 80s. And the reason why I say this is because it will tell you how desperate our situation had come, that we ended up there. Both my parents had descended into alcoholism. We really didn't have any money. I went to 7 schools by the time I was in grade 4. We moved around a lot. I got moved around from school to school. And it was just a very, very sad place to be. And it's a very sad place to start your life. So I managed to get and climb out of that hole. And that's part of the lessons that I learned over the time. So going back to Paris, where's my... before I get to Paris, what happens when you don't have support from your parents and you grow up in a place that's not a place of, I don't know, happiness and structure? I was a smart child at school. I know this for various reasons, but I just gave up on academics. My parents didn't know when I wrote exams. They didn't know when we had school holidays. They just weren't interested in, they were so consumed by their own problems. So I finished matric and I barely scraped through on my marks. I mean, I put it onto the screen here because I think people don't always believe what's the truth. But I really, really got very poor marks in my school, in my final exam. My favorite subject was history, and I spotted 3. I only learned. I didn't even know I have a history handbook when I went to write my final matric exam, and I spent my entire life in La Rochelle Girls' Eyes library, and I just read books. I was not interested in school at all. And my passion for France actually started there because a lot of the books, some of the books that I read were from the 50s, the last time they were taken out, and many of them were from, based around the French history and French culture. So my dream started there. So fast forward from that horrible start, where my story where I started my presentation in Paris, I was the CEO of the local arm of a global company. I was the only female CEO out of 35 countries around the world. I got to go to Paris every month for business, apart from August and December, which is when they have their holidays and we have ours. Europe Assistance is part of one of the biggest insurance companies in the world called the Generali Group. I traveled all around Europe, got to learn so many things when it came to, about insurance on a global perspective. And it was just like the most crazy, amazing experience. But it wasn't for me because I wanted to do another startup. So some of you might know that I started my first company when I was 25, Thatch Risk Acceptances, TRA, Natasha and the team. That's company started in 98. I still can't believe that I was given that opportunity. But I wanted to start a high net worth UMA for the at Mutual and Federal, but then at the time the old Mutual Insure Group. So I pitched to them like you would think Shark Tank. I went to see the exco. I pitched this idea to them. I was successful, and in August of 2018, I'm still very proud to say we launched, Tarina and I, we launched Elite. We did extremely well right through COVID lockdown. The business grew exceptionally fast, and I decided that I wanted to do it again because I wanted to be more involved as a shareholder. The plans didn't really work out the way it was supposed to. And I took the big the big step like Lisa was talking about. And it was a painful step because I was working with my best friend. You can imagine we were having a really, really good time working together. We were building an amazing business and a team. But there was some part missing, and that was that I wanted ownership, substantial ownership in the business that I was working in. And I wanted to have more of an entrepreneurial spirit in the business. And I felt like, you know, often we weren't getting that right so much. So then I resigned at the end of 2021. I also went to spend, as part of my final few months, the time that I worked out, I went to Paris. I have a 5-year visa, so I could just go when everyone else was still in lockdown. And I went to stay in a friend's apartment and really just had the most amazing time. So I resigned. And then in March last year, we launched Ami. Now, Ami, the word Ami means friend. Because for me, it's so important. I feel like we've lost connection in the insurance industry. I feel like that's the thing that I was really, really looking for, is to really be there, a friend in need for our brokers and clients when things go wrong. So I'm very proud to have launched this business with Lombard, our risk carrier, and our partners. We did, we really got a start. We started out a little bit slowly, but our first financial year, we did 45 million in written premium. We now have more premium than this, but that was our year was at financial year in of June. We have 2,500 clients actually now already. And our business is really going from strength to strength, and we're growing profitably, which is such an important aspect of business, building businesses in the insurance industry. It's unbelievably hard to start a UMA in South Africa. I just want to tell you that. That's why so few new UMAs enter the market, especially independent UMAs, where there's additional shareholding, where it's not owned by the risk carrier more than 50%. So the reason why that's so important is the mandate sits with the UMA, and together with our partners, we get to make decisions, and it's very important to have that autonomy. And with Lombard as our partners and risk carriers, we really do have that. So what's the secret in the sauce? This is my secret ingredients, and I'm going to take you through it. The most important thing is this concept about swallowing the frog. It really, what it means is, the quote goes, if you're going to swallow a frog, swallow it first thing in the morning. And if you have to swallow two, swallow the biggest one first. And the reason why I mentioned this is because it was a secret that I discovered very early on in my career. It's if you can learn to swallow the frog for your boss, you will get noticed. So find out what is your boss's frog and swallow that frog for him or her. The same would apply to potentially starting a business. Finding out what are those things in the industry that's not working, finding a solution for that, and really taking that as a concept for a business going forward. So I'm very good at swallowing frogs, and I want to tell you an example of where I did this. Everyone is scared of public speaking. You might know that I do a lot of radio and TV work, and you might ask, how did that all come along? And it was when I was at Santam. The Santam Exco, I was on the level just below Exco, and the Santam Exco didn't want to do any media work. People are scared of going onto radio and TV. I'd never been on a radio interview or a TV interview in my life at the time. And I said, I'll do it. And they made me go through really good training. And I started doing the spokesperson work for Santam at the time, the early 2000s. I became the spokesperson, the official spokesperson for Old Mutual Insure when we were doing Elite. And what that gave me was an unbelievable profile in the South African insurance industry. And it taught me how to present and to face many, many fears, because it's very intimidating going onto live TV, especially pre-COVID, because then we were still going into studios and doing things like that. So you know, if you swallow the frog for someone else who is in a position of power, where that might take you. So that's a message I would like to share with you. Then something that sits very close to my heart is to do the old-fashioned things really well. It's things like remembering people's names. A very good example of this is I was actually on a road show with someone in my team, one of my team members, and we were going around, and going to shops before we got to our broker's destination. And she said to me, everyone's so friendly to us today. She doesn't know what's going on. And I said to her, Zita, did you notice that whenever we're in the shops, I always greet the person by their names? I mean, that's why they have a name tag. And she said she didn't make the connection. And I said, that's what it is. It's about just doing the old-fashioned things well. It's about arriving on time. It's letting someone walk through the door before you, even if you are a woman and it's a man. Those little things, it's remembering people's names and using their names. We are genetically hardwired to when we hear our name, it's our favorite word, because remember, that's what our mothers said to us right from the word go when we were born. So when you say someone's name, you just make a connection with them. It really is just about having good table etiquette. It is about writing decent emails. I'm on a mission with my Army team at the moment about good spelling, good grammar, greeting people, being courteous. It's about how you answer the phone. These are the things that differentiate you and make you stand out in a crowd. So doing the old-fashioned things really well is really, really important. Work harder and smarter later. I can't tell you how important this is. And this is really a message to the younger people in our audience. But if you want to take it when you're like older, it's also okay. So I worked unbelievably hard when I was young. I mean, I would take absolutely everything that no one else wanted to do, because by the time I left school and I got into the working environment, my first job was at Santam, I really sort of found my, step. I really enjoyed being in the workplace. And one of the most defining things in my life was I was working at Price Forbes in Stellenbosch as a personal lines high net worth broker, and we had a binder through Lloyd's in London for Thatch. I was about 23, 24 at the time. And no one wanted to work to handle the underwriting and claims and stuff on this binder, because you had to write out forms and then put it into the mail, and it would go to London, and then the policy would get issued. The whole thing would take 6 months to turn around. It was just very admin intensive and long and drawn out. So my boss, Gavin Saul at the time, asked who wants to do this, and I said, I'll do it. And he said, you're already so busy. I said, I'll do it after hours, it's fine. I love Thatch, I love Cape Dutch buildings, I love everything about that. So I took over the administration of this Lloyd's binder, and then I realized that there was an opportunity here. I actually proposed that we make this available somehow to the rest of the markets, never got around to it. And it actually is the reason why I ended up starting Thatch Risk Acceptances, because Hanover Re, or Hollandia at the time, heard my story through an interview, and they offered me the opportunity to start my first UMA in 1998. So I worked really hard, and as the businesses mature, you can start working smarter. But if you want to make an impact and a difference, you have to work hard when you're young, and then you get to the smart bit. Now, this is such an important point. You have to learn to become a storyteller. We are all made of stories. And I think the example we just had, the way that Lisa managed to capture this audience through the screen by telling her story, and the thousands of people, I didn't mention that, we've got a new record today. So we've got more people attending today than ever before out of 45 episodes or events. The ability to tell a story, whether it is your own story or, in our industry, the story of data. And data doesn't have to be the actual numbers, but being able to translate. We've got a very big audience of brokers, being able to translate complex requirements to clients who have complex problems, and being able to translate that through a story, through using examples, so that you can actually effectively manage your clients' risks better and give them the right solutions better, is an absolute, if you can get this right, you are ahead of the pack. So learn how to articulate yourself, to tell your story, to use examples. I see the chat's going on a bit, and I wanted to ask you at the beginning of the presentation, please share your own examples of when I mentioned some of these sort of secret source ingredients, where it's worked for you. I'd love to go and read it afterwards, and also comment on that. So teach yourself, go through the training, prepare for your meeting so that you are able to be engaging, that you're able to tell and translate complex issues by the way of telling stories. So now, very, very important, figure stuff out. And if you can figure stuff out for the people that are your seniors, you become the go-to person. You become the person who are able to find solutions. If there is one thing in my life that I can't stand is when someone is good at spotting the problems. Everyone can spot a problem. The person who can come up with a solution is the one that will move ahead in their career. There is no doubt about that. Everyone loves a problem solver. We all know it. I have to sort of temper my enthusiasm for figuring stuff out with my children, because my daughter has told me that sometimes she just wants me to listen. I don't have to solve all her problems for her. So it's not always wanted. But in our industry, where we are faced with numerous problems all the time, being able to come up with solutions is potentially new businesses. It's finding value-added services, value-added products, finding product solutions to problems that no one else has managed to do. And one of the examples that I would like to use here, where this has really stood the test of time, that I think back about it, and I'm like, I'm so proud when I see it playing out in the markets. When I joined MUA, originally I headed up the team. I approached them and we changed the business from a motor only to a fully fledged personal lines UMA. One of our board directors sent me a box full of wordings. He was also a Lloyd's syndicate member or something like that. I can't remember. And he sent me a box of physical wordings. And I was going through all these high net worth wordings, because at the time, there wasn't a fully fledged personal lines high net worth product available to all brokers in the market. So some of the big corporates had their own offerings, but the independents didn't have a high net worth offering. So I was reading through all these wordings, and I couldn't find the average condition. So, the under insurance average condition. So I was like, how is that possible? Made contact with this gentleman, and he explained to me that in the UK wealth market, they send out a valuator to do a valuation, and then they issue an agreed value policy. And that is the reason why MUA launched at the time the first average free policy as a result of doing a valuation. And now I look at all our competitors in the market, and everyone does it. There was a problem there that needed to be fixed, and we offered a solution, and it was our key differentiator at the time, and it stood MUA very well over the years. Now, show up and do the work. Now, you might think I'm talking about showing up at the office, but what I do mean by this is you need to show up not just in your job, but you need to show up in the industry. InsureTalk is an amazing platform to stay informed and on top of things, with reading all the comments around why you are here every month. But you also need to show up at your industry events, be part of the local councils, attend the events, make yourself available to serve on council. Serving on the Insurance Institute of the Western Cape Council was without a doubt a game changer for my career, because I had an opportunity to connect with the industry far outside of my immediate circle. It was the days before social media. It was, we have to still do everything in person, but I got to meet the entire industry locally, but also on a national level. Go to the events, be there and be active, be an active participant in your industry. And if you want to see change happen, be that change. If you feel like there's not enough young people of color in business, be at the events, connect with people, be the change, enter the insurance apprentice. Just go out there and show up and do the work. And when you show up, make sure that you look the part, that you are presentable, and that you reach out to the other individuals that you get to network with. Something else about showing up and doing the work before I get on to diving through cracked doors. What I think is so important is that you show up a little bit early and you leave a little bit later, because often the most important conversations in the room happen before the conference starts and afterwards. So try and make the time to be to be there to really network. If you want to use those opportunities, you will never know when you meet the person that's going to change your life. You just don't know when that connection will happen. So make sure that you are at the table when the right person sits next to you. Diving through cracked doors is something that I can't stress enough. I'm nearly at the end of my presentation, so don't leave us yet, because we've got one quick speaker after me. So the moment that my entire life changed from a career perspective was I had gone on my first overseas trip, and we were quite stupid at the time booking things. So we went to the Far East, and flying back to South Africa took 28 hours, and we went through about 7 time zones, and eventually got back to Cape Town. I landed in Cape Town on the Sunday, and jet lagged, extremely tired, very, very over aeroplanes, and got home, and there was a message on my answering machine. It was the days before cell phones and stuff. It was in the 90s, to say that I had a job interview in Johannesburg the next morning at 8 o'clock. And I didn't want to go. The thought of getting onto another tube of steel and flying to a city that I've never been to Joburg at the time. And I decided I obviously went. And it was my diving through a cracked door there. And I got to Joburg. It was Hanover Re, called Hollandia at the time. And they were interviewing me for a job as a facultative underwriter. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I called it a facultative underwriter. I did not know what this job entailed. And at the time, the CEO would interview every single person, Steve Murphy, who came to work for the company. And I had a slot with him, and he asked me questions about commercial fire rates. And I said to him, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about commercial. I really know mostly thatch. And he was like, tell me more about that. And because I got onto that plane and I flew to Joburg feeling absolutely awful. I also had to do a whole day of tests, by the way, so that preceded the interview. I was offered the opportunity to start a business, and backed by one of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world. And if I didn't take that little cracked door and open it, I wouldn't be here today. I'm absolutely sure of that. So look for those cracked doors. Never just walk past because you think you know what's going to happen when you open the door. Yes. And that's the last point of advice that I have for you. I promised myself I'm not going to play videos, but this is such a wonderful little way to end this presentation. It's a very short video clip, and it really talks about how your life starts. Doesn't have to define where you end up. And you can make a change when you're 50 years old. I resigned from a very cushy job, earning a fantastic salary after I turned 50 to start a business, my 3rd startup. So it's not defined by age or gender. How you start out in life doesn't define where you end up. So this is a little clip that I want to leave you with, and then I will hand you over to the next speaker.
Listen up, babies. Life's not fair. You get no say in the world you're born into. You don't decide your name. You don't decide where you come from. You don't decide if you have a place to call home, or if your whole family has to leave the country. Yeah, it's messed up. You don't decide how the world judges a person like you. You don't decide how your story begins, but you do get to decide how it ends. Yes!
hope you enjoyed that little clip. I want to say something before I introduce you to our next speaker. I would be a terrible entrepreneur if I didn't ask you to join me on our journey with Ami. If you're not a broker of ours yet, please, I ask you to go to our website or reach out to me, and that you support us on our journey as we build South Africa's friendliest personal lines insurance brand. And we appreciate the support that's already out there. I hope that after today that you were inspired to do new things, to not be afraid of the challenges, and to know that that some people have walked before you. We rise by lifting each other. I absolutely believe in that saying. So on the note of truly inspiring and wonderful and just all-round fantastic people, I want to introduce you to Rianette Whitehead. Rianette is the owner of FA News, and she is as we know now, the founder of the Insurance Apprentice, which is really an incubator for unbelievable talent in this industry. And we've seen some amazing, strong women in the spirit of Women's Day and Women's Month come out through the Insurance Apprentice. So Rianette gives us each month a media update of what's happening in the industry. So I'm going to ask Rianette to give us that update. And then after that, I'll do a quick closing out goodbye. And yeah, let's hear what Rianette has to say.
Good morning, InsureTalkers. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here in my FA News and Insurance Apprentice capacity. My name is Rianette Whitehead, for those who do not know me. Today, I am not going to do my usual chat. I've decided to dedicate it to the Insurance Apprentice, and it's just because the deadline is 31 August, and this is my last push on this amazing platform to talk to sponsors, to talk to applicants, and to talk to managers who know they've got amazing people that will benefit from this innovation or experience. I won't do all the talking, luckily. I'm handing it over to a few others, and you will see what I mean. But I just want to introduce two things, or mention two things, before I do the rest. And it's two exciting, very exciting developments. One, on top of all the normal prizes, we have secured 100,000 Rand cash prize for the winner. 100,000 Rand cash prize for the winner. Thank you, Ayan, for that. We are super excited about that. If money is a potential driver for you, then hopefully this is it. The other thing is we are bending the rules slightly. Why? Because we're 10 years down the line, and everything is developing and changing and going in all kinds of directions. I don't want to share very big news yet, because I can't. I haven't got the signed documents yet. But a lot of what we do and a lot of the tasks is around socioeconomic stuff. It's around innovation. It's around approaching things differently. And for that reason, we have decided that maybe we need to mend and bend the experience part a little bit. The important part is that you still need to have exposure in the short-term non-life sector. So you can't come in to this competition with no experience on short-term or non-life. This is a requirement, and that will remain for now a requirement. But we do now and will now accept people from other parts of the industry who have experience from other parts of the industry. Remember that your minimum experience needs to be 4 years. I would suggest a little bit more because you come up against very clever people, and it's really talented young professionals that are entering. You want to give yourself the best chance, and for that, I would suggest that you wait a little bit longer if you've just got the minimum experience. Do wait a little bit longer, get that experience. But for now, if you have only 1 or 2 years or less experience in short term, but you've been in the financial services industry, meaning in the life side, medical scheme investment side, for your 4 or more years, then you can enter. I have a few people that approached me to ask me why not, because it's about innovation, it's about thinking different. And if that is who you are, your some exposure to short term will most certainly be critical, but your wider thinking of the industry, of the financial services industry, would be good enough for you, and it would be great to attract other people from other parts of the industry, because when you listen to the rest of this thing, you will hear that this is all about knowledge sharing and knowledge hub. So why not? 2 very exciting developments. If you've got any questions, please email me. I'm happy to answer them. But for now, we had an info session this week for people who consider wanting to enter, for managers who wants to see if who they think is strong enough is indeed strong enough, and for sponsors, obviously, for those who are still keen to get involved. And I have decided to take snippets from this and entice you to go and listen to that in more detail. So what I'm sharing now is small parts of what was discussed, and I would motivate you to go and listen to the rest of the stuff. It's on the Insurance Apprentice YouTube page. And we've also started podcasts, TLA Talks. It's on Spotify, I think it's on Apple, and it's on YouTube. Please go and listen to it. It is fantastic. 2 great sessions that we had. So you can literally listen to that while you drive to the office or somewhere else. Go and take the time. For now, I'm done. And it's over to my team. And if you've got any questions around applications, around sponsorship, please do not hesitate to make contact with me. Goodbye. Enjoy.
When Rionette asked me, to present today, I thought to myself, I had recently presented at the SAICB conference on my journey on TIA. And I thought to myself, I'm going to follow that same sort of structure. I said to Rionette the other day, I'm not going to give you any inspirational mumbo jumbo. I'm just going to tell you like it is and tell you what my experience was and what it could be for you. I think first and foremost, you have to start with your why. Why are you entering the show? And people enter the show for various reasons. It could be for personal branding. It could be for, learning and growth. It could be just because I was bored one night and I entered, which is similar to the story that I'm about to tell you. Till now, I still believe that the Insurance Apprentice is one of the things that I invested in that paid the biggest return on investment, or the cost that I paid there would have the biggest return on investment. And I say this because the journey is truly transformational. I think if you've been following me on social media, you would have heard me say that my journey on the Insurance Apprentice was a journey to a version 2.0 of myself. And I still maintain that up until this point. The thing is, the show throws you into this environment where you experience a level of learning, development, and growth that you would ordinarily just experience over a period of years. I mean, when I started the Insurance Apprentice, I was quite stiff. You'll see on the first episode, very, very stiff, standing, didn't know where to place my hands. It was a lot because of all the cameras. And as the show progresses, you start getting more comfortable. And it's not the comfort with the studio, with the cameras that matters. You start getting comfortable with yourself. You start realizing that I'm here to give it my best. It is for no one else but myself. Now, if I have to sum up what filming week is like, I'm not going to lie to you. It is one of the most nerve-wracking experiences. It is. It's not all, unicorns and butterflies. It's quite intense. There's a lot of stress that you experience. But the point is that you develop a thicker skin, you develop coping mechanisms, you develop ways that are not toxic to deal with these stressful situations that you'll start to experience in your corporate career or would have experienced previously, but weren't quite equipped to deal with them.
And people often ask me, why did you stay? Why did you stick with the show? Why did you stick with the journey? And I said, because it's bigger than just myself, and it's bigger than just the few people that we have around today. This platform is really a powerful opportunity to impact the lives of others. And wow, what a difference that we can make to the future generation of those who come into the insurance industry. And that's why I stick with it, because of the benefit it yields and for the impact it has on our industry to do the right thing, to create the powerful leaders. So it's up to us to make the right decisions now about where we want to take the insurance industry and which better platform that can really provide the framework for it than the Insurance Apprentice. Because I was a young, I would say, lady back then, and I was in KZN, small office, regional office, and who would have thought? I didn't think that I had a shot, from a region to go up and compete with the who's of the industry at that level.
What is that the judges are actually looking for when you're there with your papers and taking score?
I think the first thing is that you cannot fill an already full cup. So going into this, you might be an expert in your area, or you might know something. It's always best to go in there really with an open mind, understanding that you'll be dealing with really diverse range of issues that are probably outside of your comfort zone. So the first thing is, don't come in thinking that there's one way of doing things. The real world doesn't work like that. There are many different ways, and there's no right or wrong answer as well. All it is that first, we're looking for someone who is able to collaborate, because it's not about you, really, ultimately. If you look at the journey and everybody who has won, it has always been the individuals who are smart enough to understand their strengths, their limitations, understand other strengths and limitations, and try to, form a tapestry of all of those strengths. Because if you look at it in the chain, you are as strong as your weakest link in that. So if you are going to be the strongest, and while everybody else is weak, guess who's the weakest link in that? It is the one who is as strong as whereas everybody else has got the same amount of tension. So it's not about necessarily you there. If you go there because you want to make it about the task, make it about the exercise, ultimately, which is the same type of mentality that even in business you need to apply. The person who is the biggest, the strongest, is not necessarily the one who always wins. It's the one who knows how to play and all of that. And then the other thing which is quite important as well is that it's not just about technical skills as people think it is. It's definitely not. It's a variety range of things that you need to ultimately improve on. How you articulate an issue, it doesn't have to be the best issue, but how you connect the dots, how you take the input of everybody that's in the team. Because if you don't, when you go out there, you might have the best one, but if you discarded something that one of the team members has mentioned, it was quite important as well. When you get there, it's going to show. We're going to see the disconnect from a distance.
If you're coming in with a very cocky, I know it all, I don't need to teach anybody. And I also, Tim, when judging, I walk around. And Muzi, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but the moment you walk around to the groups and the cohorts, the loudest one is always like, oh, and this is my idea, and I, I've come up with this, etc., etc. Tim was putting his head down, is what I'm talking about. But what I want to say is that in my year, a judge said something so powerful. He said, I wasn't looking for the loudest one in the room. I wasn't looking for the cockiest one in the room. I was looking for the individual that's like a glue that sticks everybody together and forms this cohesive gel that when you move, they move the team forward together. And that's why attitude is so important, to get the attitude right, to get the thinking right, to come in knowing that as a team, yes, individually I will stand out in the journey, but as a team, I've got to get this team mindset right. And in order to do that, I can then accelerate. Yeah, such a valid question, but I think, attitude extends beyond the TIA journey. Let's just talk about attitude for a second in general. I always tell my team, I can teach technical skills. If you come into the apprentice, you learn very, very quickly, right? You can teach the technical skills, you can teach to a certain extent the soft skills, but I can't teach attitude.
And just like that, we've reached the end of today's conference, InsureTalk number 45. I actually can't believe that we're at number 45 already. So I wanted to just thank Rianette for that insert. It's always fascinating to know what's going on around the industry, and you do such a good job at preparing, and we see that and we appreciate it. Now, just like that, it's almost spring. I'm seeing some green leaves on the trees around Cape Town. We have had the most incredible winter in Cape Town. I don't know if you saw the numbers, the rainfall numbers, but 3 times the average, and the highest on recorded history since they started taking rainfall numbers on record. So as we approach spring, we would like to wish you the strength to finish this year off. The end is in sight, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, but also for providing us the input and the comments in the chat section about why you join InsureTalk every month. We're going to use that to make sure that we continue to deliver on topics, speakers, CPD hours for as long as we possibly can. So on that note, I say thank you and goodbye.